Hey everyone. So this is a quick update for those who haven't been following the drama on Twitter. So basically, the last film in the series about vaccines and the dark horse got taken down by YouTube on Sunday, which also happened with our ivermectin for and against film. And I thought that it was an algorithm flag because of the subject matter, and that when I appealed, it would be reinstated. But when I appealed, not only did they not reinstate it, they rejected the appeal and also put a community guideline strike on the channel for medical misinformation, which was very peculiar. And obviously it's now just gone back up. It will be put up immediately at the same time as this film. I've re-exported it because there was a glitch towards the end of the film and it froze for about half an hour. But YouTube obviously have changed their minds, even though they said that there was no more appeals. The reason they changed their minds, I strongly suspect, is that there's an article that's coming out at the same time by Matt Taibbi, the veteran journalist, who contacted me on Twitter after he saw... So when I posted on Twitter, it got quite a lot of pickup, nearly 1,000 likes and many, many people retweeting it. So I'm not surprised that YouTube have changed their minds. I think there was... they're obviously responding. If they had a vaguely competent press team, they would have responded, and they clearly have. But it throws up all sorts of ridiculous and peculiar questions. I mean, YouTube is clearly not set up for any kind of truth-seeking, let alone journalism. They're completely... I can only imagine that they are really overwhelmed and are really struggling under the kind of what they're trying to deal with, trying to take on medical misinformation during the pandemic. One of the really key things is that with the ivermectin for and against film, when I actually looked at it, I did that film, I interviewed Tess Lawrie, I interviewed two other medical figures who put a counter-argument to Tess Lawrie deliberately, because I thought that the situation was getting confused, because there were some films about ivermectin that I think did cross the line into advising certain courses of treatment, and I do think that puts the tech platforms in a difficult position. There are regulations around medical misinformation on what you can put onto bottles, on medicines, claims that you can make about certain medicines. So I don't see why YouTube shouldn't be exempt if that's where people are getting their information from. I see the logic. Some people disagree, and they think YouTube should have a different set of rules. We can argue about that, but I can at least see that there is a problem there. So the reason I made that decision with ivermectin for and against was that I put both sides of the story so that people can make up their own minds, and then it clearly wasn't. And then I'd be able to see whether YouTube was actually regulating discussion of ivermectin or regulating certain courses of action, which is what I thought they were doing. YouTube actually took that video down, but on appeal put it back up, which I thought meant that they were not regulating discussion of ivermectin, they were regulating extravagant claims like, for example, it's 100% effective as a prophylactic and you can take it instead of a vaccine, which now, for those who've been paying attention, the study that was based on Carvalho out of Argentina has now been proved at the very least very, very shoddy and probably didn't even happen. So, so these are consequential claims. I understand the tech platforms are in a difficult position. The film's back up, and thank you to Matt Taibbi for covering it. And one last thing I do want to say, because I know there's going to be some people saying this, and there were on Twitter, and there will be in the YouTube comments, how do you like it when the boot's on the other foot? Really, you haven't been paying attention. From the beginning of this, I've been saying that I didn't think Brett's film should have been taken down. I don't think censorship is a way of dealing. I don't think the whole gatekeeping game that's played by the mainstream no longer works. My central issue with the Dark Horse is that they weren't engaging with people of a counter narrative, that they've been stuck in a very small bubble and they weren't engaging with people outside it. They didn't have anyone with a counter narrative coming on the podcast. As far as I could tell, they weren't conversing with anyone who disagreed with their perspective. And my argument was engagement. And I asked Brett and Heather on multiple times if they'd engage, and they chose not to. So that's not the gotcha you think it is. And I think if you think that I'm in favor of censorship or in some way trying to play the old gatekeeping game, I think you've got it wrong. I think it is way more complex than that. I mean, a lot of very, very smart people are wrestling with this problem and have been for quite a while. And I don't think, and I do think that we are evolving towards some kind of functional way of dealing with these questions. But my choice of who to interview or not is my choice. That's not censorship. That's not gatekeeping. But these are very interesting topics. There's a lot of nuance to it. And myself and Chris Williamson will be coming back to this fairly soon and continuing this conversation because I think it's really interesting. And the film is back up. So enjoy it, share it, and see you soon.